to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we are continuing on from the duology of Series 9, The Woman Who Lived, written by Catherine Tigana, who makes her first Doctor Who story. She had previously written several episodes for the spin-off series Torchwood, and is directed by Ed Bazalgette. And yeah, like I said, this is the part of the duology. Series 9 was advertised as the series of mainly two-parters, with the first two stories being two-parters. The story after this will be a two-parter, and though this story was advertised as well as being the second part of a two-parter, it's not really. It's mainly two individual episodes that are heavily connected with each other due to the character of a shielder played by Maisie Williams, better known for her character of Arya Stark in the Game of Thrones franchise. And at the time of when this episode aired back in, I believe it's 2014, she was like a massive, big-named star. So it was clear that this series, when she was putting on the series, that Stephen Moffat and the production team would try and use her as much as possible, especially that she is a British-born actress. So, you know, it's cool that she's got onto Doctor Who in the first place, but the fact that she becomes a recurring character for Series 9 is really cool. Although, again, this all depends on how you feel about the character to begin with. The first episode in the duology, The Girl Who Died, isn't a particularly strong episode. It's a story which, if you watch my vlog, is one that I personally didn't like, and a lot of people, it kind of just went under their radar. It's an episode that they watched, they might had fun with it whilst they watched it, but completely forgot about it afterwards. And one of the main factors is that the character of a shielder just isn't that interesting. She doesn't get much to do or say other than seemingly the Doctor has some sort of interest towards her. Of course, this leads into a story of at the end of that episode where she becomes an immortal, and this story is set several decades after that story, round about the time, I don't know exactly round about the time of, but clearly that, you know, stuff has been advanced. There's still, in a roundabout medieval ways, you got like hymens, robbing people, you got horses and carriers, and you got like soldiers now. So clearly things have advanced. It is past the 100-Year War and the Black Plague. So clearly things are starting to pick up. Maybe Victorian times, going by some of the clothes, but I could be wrong on that front. Also, again, like important to note is that Catherine Tigana is returning from, this is her first story in Doctor Who after she had written many very popular episodes like McEdam. Out of Time is probably one of the best stories of Torchwood. And, you know, her stories do deal a lot of singular emotional characters, and she's also, because she worked with Torchwood, episodes like Captain Jack Harkness is another one that she's written about, and she usually connects it to one character. And also because of Torchwood, she has already had experience with writing characters who are immortal. So her writing this story, this particular episode, seems like a perfect match. Now, this episode isn't actually particularly liked in the general senses. If the first episode is an episode which ran out of people's radar, an episode which people kind of watch and they kind of forget about it afterwards, this is a story which a lot of people watch, and at best they laugh at how dumb it is. At worst, they just remember it as kind of like watching it's kind of like having the experience of a migraine. That was one of the best descriptions I've ever heard. Just talking about this story. That was a really funny exchange. I can't remember where I heard that from, but I remember somebody explaining this story as as having a migraine. That's just, I don't know, it's really funny. Most of the criticisms, I will say, do revolve around the villain, but the story isn't really about the villain. Also, another interesting fact is that this is actually a companion-light adventure. Though it's not really established until about halfway into the episode. Clara and the doctor. Clara is currently like at her school as the doctor's just travelling on his own for a little bit. Something which has been established does happen. Clara isn't in terms of inside the continuity of the show, isn't a full-time companion. She goes back home, she goes to her job, and the doctor's kind of like what she does in her spare time, her hobby, outside of her real life, normal life. So this is an interesting aspect of seeing the Doctor's life during these small little gaps. I would say it would be interesting to see what Clara was getting up to when the Doctor's not around, though we did kind of get that in The Magician's Apprentice, but like very briefly at the start. So that out of the way, let's get into the story at hand. The story starts with the Doctor arriving at this time by himself as the legendary Hyman goes and tries to rob a woman and a man's when the horse in their carriage is going to take him to a particular location. We later learn that this person is a shielder, and the Doctor just randomly bumps into her as he's trying to track down something, which we later learn is the Eye of Hades, this particular jewel. And it's really like the MacGuffin of the story for the first half. The actual mission, the ideal of the story, isn't that important to the narrative for the first half. It's mainly developing our characters between the Doctor and a shielder, or in this story, she is now called Me, as she explains, and which is a really interesting, fascinating concept for sci-fi, because characters with immortality is something that's been established in many franchises, especially, like I said, Doctor Who, with the Doctor and also Captain Jack Harkness. But this story actually does something really unique with the concept, because a shielder is an immortal, but she's also a normal, everyday girl. And the thing with that is that she has a human brain, and because of that, she tends to forget things. She explains to the Doctor, she might remember the Doctor because, you know, she's the man that saved he's the man that saved her life, but most of the things, the family, the entire village from the previous episode, she has no memory of. She remembers Clara by name, but she doesn't really get the feel or any idea for Clara. I think there's a little bit of dialogue where she explains that she's like a pet to the Doctor, which then leads into like another discussion, which I'll get into. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept because, yeah, if immortality was a real thing, I imagine it'd be more like this, because human memories are so fleeting. We forget things, you know, even important things in our lives we forget, and this seems like a real interpretation of what immortality might even feel like. With some really great dialogue and some really great ideas presented here. I was kind of surprised rewatching the story how much interesting ideas there are presented to us. A great example is that because she struggles to remember everything, she decides to write a diary. However, because of her long life, her catalogues of her life, her diaries, have now become a sort of mini library. And if she wants to remember stuff, if she wants to, if she, tries to figure out, curious about herself, she will read her own diaries from like decades ago. That's a really interesting, fascinating concept. It also leads a great scene where the Doctor can like basically read her mind, read her memories, without her being present, in a really interesting scene, which leads into more interesting concepts. But because of this aspect, she struggled to basically find an identity. As she explains, she kind of forgotten her own name, and back and forward with other names, other identities. However, none of them seem to stick, with the one exception, me. Because that's all she has at the end, me. Now, it's incredibly dumb. The episode does a very poor job at explaining it. It's not by far any interesting. You know, me, I get the idea of it, I get the concept of it, but calling your character me is just so silly that every time we have these scenes where the Doctor, actually I would say the idea of the name is actually well utilised in the story with certain scenes where the Doctor's trying to get to her by calling her Shielder, by trying to remember her of her previous life. But because that means nothing to her now, it actually does the opposite effect, makes her go against the Doctor's arguments, the Doctor's debate. And so it leads into this really interesting, in my opinion, dynamic with them. And what we learn as well is me. I'm going to call her a Shielder because just like the concept of the name me is just so stupid. But I do feel like in the episode, the story does try to do its best to try and justify the really stupid naming. And so a Shielder and the Doctor, we get lots of scenes of them trying to debate immortality and their identities, with a Shielder originally believing that the Doctor has come for her so that they can travel together. So the Doctor has found her. It's like, oh wait, you're now an immortal. Okay, we can go traveling with each other because I'm an immortal. We can relate on that respect. She does, but originally believe that the Doctor and her have this kind of ground, that she, throughout her adventures, have learned many stories, many mysteries about the Doctor and his experiences on Earth. This could connect to some first Doctor stories from which he travelled around this time. The Romans is probably a great example. In fact, this story visually looks like the Romans. And the Doctor also debating this is like, no, I'm not going to take you with you because it wouldn't be the right thing to do. And there are some really great dialogues here. Catherine Tigana really shows that she understands this concept and she really tries to push it to the front of the story. The problem is, what I think is the problem is that stops this story being connected to so many people, is the main villain, the main thread of the plot, which gets taken over through the second half of the story, does kind of take over everything, and it becomes a lot less interesting. But the story presents a lot of great ideas, great concepts, and either does nothing with them or does very little. For example, the Doctor is presented with the book, and he basically reads how Shielder had 3 children that babies died during the Black Plague, and all that really leads up to is a scene where a Shielder basically explains why she keeps that bit of the diary to remind her not to have any kids. And the emotional hook is there. We have this connection with her, but then that's it. It wants to focus on this other concept and why, and the concept of basically traveling. Before that, let's get introduced to one of our characters, Sam Swift, played by Rufus Hound. Now, Rufus Hound was a big comedian actor at the time, and he's always an actor which, I know a lot of people like him. I don't know his comedic work. He seems really funny. But he's the kind of actor which, every time I see him, he always seems out of place. I don't know what is it. I don't know if it's he has particular facial features or his acting. But here he does feel like guest star, if that makes any sense. Of course, Rufus Hound would become more synonymous with Doctor Who in the audio dramas, as he would go on to play the Time Lord, the meddling monk, with the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, in a series of audio dramas, as well as appearing alongside Michelle Gomez's in the Missy spin-off series of audio dramas, which is really cool. And here, Sam Swift, which can I just say, really, this story is full of just dumb names, is like a rival highwayman, I keep calling him a highwayman is the word I was actually looking for, who has this kind of rivalry with the highwayman known as the Nightmare, which is a shielder. But he also kind of knows and kind of fancies a shielder, but doesn't realise they're the same person, per se. And there's not really much to him, to the character, despite some really... I do really like his scene at the end, which I'll get into. But there's not really much to him. Let's get into our villains, because it turns out that prior to the Doctor's encounter, a shielder was actually working with an alien entity in this story. She had partnered up with this creature which promised her to leave the planet. And it is here that we get Leanne Dorr, played by Angus Bakare. I butchered that name. I do utterly apologise. And the actor seems to take a really great job staying and trying to take this role really seriously. But he's given nothing to work with. Leanne Dorr is this king of this race from another dimension, another planet, which can only be accessed through this amulet called the Eye of Hades, which connects to this other dimension, but only by seemingly exhumed life, cracking reality with a death. And the dialogues, the scene with him, despite taking themselves really seriously, there's just really nothing there. And it seems that like every scene it's kind of comical, like you see him like constantly like in the bushes and his eyes are glowing, and after he's like fully revealed as this lion, this half human half lion species, he never does that again, and it's really strange. He also breathes fire in like 2 or 3 scenes, which hurts no one, attacks no one, threatens no one, heightens or lowers the state. He's just a really odd character who has very little to work with. But let's get into one of my particular scenes that sticks out. And that is the scene where a shielder and the Doctor go to get the Eye of Hades in this fancy house. And there's a scene where they're stuck in a chimney because they're hiding. And they're discussing the ideas of immortality, which is, again, this is a lot of stuff that I really do dislike this episode for. And the shielder basically explains to the Doctor, you know, I understand you from like from an immortality point of view. Why do you travel with the humans, these normal plain humans? I mean, Clara is basically a puff of dust in your timeline. She's there, and then she's going to die. She's going to disappear. Why do you keep traveling with humans? They're feeble. They're weaklings. They just don't progress like normal humans. It's draining to see so many people dying in your eyes. Great scene, great powerful moment. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. This feels like a sin to say. But Murray Gold's music ruins that scene. What do I mean? Let me explain. Murray Gold, of course, the composer of the revived era up to this point, from both the Russell T Davies and the Stephen Moffat era, he's done some of the greatest music in Doctor Who. He usually is very good at tone and setting, and he really gets a nick for it's Murray Gold. In my opinion, he's one of the best composers out there. Here it feels like he had an off day. There are scenes where it takes itself extremely serious, and they're talking about this concept of death. But it's got this quirky, like Pink Panther music, not Pink Panther music, but like doom, 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 like that kind of music. For scenes which really don't deserve it. It's a weird low. It's a very rare low point for Murray Gold's music, where not only it's not memorable, but it's also distracting from the story it's telling, which is really strange and really bizarre, in my opinion. So that the Doctor then does explain like why he doesn't let her in, because he's basically left her on Earth and basically thought nothing of it, thinking that her life as an immortal doesn't really justify him taking her onto the TARDIS. But now he definitely won't, because of her immortality and because she's become so distant to humanity. As the Doctor proclaims, I didn't realise your ability not to die would rust your heart, rust your soul, so that you don't feel for humanity, don't feel for anyone. Really great moment, really great line. Another thing that's important to this story, in my opinion, the story is really, really funny. With the scene where Shielder, she gets these two guards that hear that the highwayman is come to the house, to which he explains, no, I haven't, but this is the accomplice, the Doctor. You've got to keep this person here whilst I go to the hanging of Sam Swift. And the soldiers are just like, we are given a fortune here, a fortune of £20. And the Doctor's just like, what? That's it? Which, of course, the rate of currency back then is completely different to now. And the Doctor actually bribes them with hiding out all the treasures of a Shielder, the minimum of £30. And they're just like, and they actually are bribed by it. And the scene then that follows, where they go basically to the hanging of Sam Swift. He's about to be executed for his crimes as a burglar and a criminal. However, he basically realizes that him telling these jokes, keeping his audience basically interested, is what's keeping him alive. And he's kind of having this trying to say as much as he can, just to try and keep himself alive. And when he spots the Doctor, him and the Doctor have this kind of trying to think as much jokes as possible. Doctor, pull up a care curtains, that kind of stuff. I do think the actors, Rufus Hound and Peter Capaldi, absolutely nail it here. I haven't talked much about Peter Capaldi in the story. As I mentioned in my previous videos about Series 9, the Doctor here is a complete personality shift compared to him in Series 8. The Doctor has a now much more quirky, a much more bizarre-ish, shall I say, atmosphere about him. As I perfectly described, he's the kind of Doctor who is your crazy uncle who moved to Vegas and never got married. He brings out that odd quality in a person his age. And though I feel like a lot of times it doesn't really work, here I actually think it does work, because the story is a lot more humorous. Though it does have these dark moments about the immortality, it does have this humorous, more lighter moments. This is a story you could potentially show your kids, and Peter Capaldi really nails this aspect of the Doctor. Like I said, it's not an aspect that, I prefer the way Peter Capaldi portrays the character in Series 8, but Peter Capaldi can play both, and that is just a testament to how great an actor he is. And probably the way the story then fails is the ending, where Shielder puts this device on Sam Swift, killing him and sending a portal up into the sky. It turns out that Liam Dorr is betrayed them, and he's going to send their fleet to invade Earth and destroy everything. And the Shield is just like, in a really poorly written scene, is just like, I care. Oh God, I care. Doctor, I actually care about these people. Now please let me help me save them. And the Doctor's just kind of like glad as there's destruction, but she cares, that she doesn't want to see these people hurt. It's not a very good written scene, if we're going to be honest. And so the other chip, I don't know if I remember talking about it. Also, I need to mention something from my last video. That story ended. The last episode ended with the Doctor proclaiming that a Shielder is kind of like a hybrid connecting to the story arc. It's really silly. It's really stupid. But anyway, in the last episode, the Doctor gave a Shielder another medical kit device of the Myra in case a Shielder finds somebody she couldn't bear to lose. So the Doctor and the Shielder, using that device, puts on to Sam Swift. Sam Swift recovers from his death of the Eye of Horus, bringing him back to life. And we get the scene in a bar where Sam Swift is like giggling and stuff, and the Doctor and the Shielder have this discussion about their relationship with each other. Really interesting. Captain Jack Harkness gets a mention, which is not only a great reference to Torchwood, but again, Catherine Tigana wrote this episode, so it's like a meta reference. Really cool. And the story ends with the Doctor picking up Clara again in the part. The Shielder basically claims that she's not the Doctor's enemy, she is his friend, but she also will protect the people who the Doctor will leave behind. She will follow the Doctor and basically pick up the mess after him. Basically damage control. With the story ending with Clara's returning on the TARDIS when the Doctor comes back for her. And Clara basically becomes one of the children that the Doctor helped with his school math, something that will happen off screen. She wanted to thank the Doctor by sending her a selfie, and the Doctor had a look, and he can see a Shielder in the background, to which Clara doesn't realise. But the Doctor and Clara have a nice little hug, and the Doctor's just like, "I've missed you, you know. I'm glad you're back into the TARDIS." And so that is The Woman Who Lived. Now, it's a story which actually has a lot going for it, a lot of potential. I was actually kind of surprised rewatching this, how much stuff I would like was in this. A lot of stuff which was actually generally interesting, and a lot of great scenes, a lot of great moments, and the actors, particularly Maisie Williams and Peter Capaldi, given a really great performance. However, it's not a particularly strong story. The main villain and the main vocal plot of the story is bland and forgettable. Though the story does have a lot of great ideas and do go into depth with them a little bit, it's not enough to keep your engagement in the adventure at hand. And of course, it all really depends on your interest of Maisie Williams as a Shielder character to begin with. I wasn't too keen on her, and I think because of that, I wasn't particularly keen on this story. So, The Woman Who Lives, in my opinion, is kind of 5 out of 10 if I was doing ratings. It's okay. I'm surprised that I actually liked this story more than the last episode, compared to how other people rate these stories. Yeah, it's really strange. So anyway, that is The Woman Who Lived. So join me next time when Kate Stewart and Osgood uncover a conspiracy as the treaties between the Zygons and the humans, which was established in the Day of the Doctor, are coming apart as a terrorized organization basically tries to get back their Zygon inheritance to try and rule and invade and conquer as many as they can. As the Doctor makes a massive plea to stop this war, to stop this cruelty, to stop this violence. So join me next time for the Zygon invasion and the Zygon inversion. We might also as well talk about the little web short, the Zygon installation, I believe it's called. I can't remember. So join me next time for that. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.